The massive alien ships appeared in Earth's orbit without warning. They were unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Each vessel stretched for miles, their surfaces gleaming with strange metals that seemed to shift colors in the light. For 3 days, the ships simply hung there in silence, while the world below panicked. Commander Jiho stood in the operations room of Earth's Unified Defense Force headquarters, watching the screens with growing unease. He was a tall man, with sharp eyes and graying hair at his temples. 20 years of military service had taught him to recognize threats. And these ships were the biggest threat humanity had ever faced. "Sir, they're sending a transmission," said a young officer at the communications console. "Put it on screen," Jiho ordered. The image that appeared made everyone in the room fall silent. The alien was humanoid, but clearly not human. Its skin had a pale blue tint, and its eyes were completely black with no visible pupils. It wore elaborate armor decorated with symbols that seemed to glow. "Humans of Earth," the alien spoke in perfect English, though its mouth movements didn't match the words. "I am Ambassador Kelvor of the Galactic Dominion. Your species has been evaluated. You will submit to Imperial rule within 30 days. You will surrender all military weapons. You will provide 50% of your planet's resources each year as tribute. Refuse, and your species will be eliminated. We have destroyed 17 civilizations who chose unwisely. Do not be the 18th. The transmission ended abruptly. The operations room erupted in chaos as officers started shouting questions and suggestions. Jiho raised his hand for silence. "Get me the World Council immediately," he said quietly. Across the planet, every government held emergency meetings. Some leaders wanted to fight. Others insisted that negotiation was the only path. A few suggested immediate surrender to save lives. The debates raged for days while the alien ships waited above. Ambassador Hana was chosen to lead Earth's diplomatic response. She was a brilliant negotiator who had resolved conflicts between nations that seemed impossible to solve. But as she prepared for the meeting with the Dominion, she felt a fear she had never experienced before. The negotiation took place on a Dominion shuttle that landed in Geneva. Hana entered with a small team, including a translator and 2 security officers. The interior of the shuttle was sterile and cold, with lighting that hurt human eyes. Ambassador Kelvor sat on a raised platform, looking down at the humans. "You have come to accept our terms," he stated. "It was not a question. We have come to discuss terms," Hana replied carefully. 30 days is not enough time for our world governments to make such a massive decision. We request more time. 6 months at minimum." Kelvor's expression didn't change. "You have 30 days. This is not negotiable." "Then let us discuss the resource tribute," Hana continued, refusing to show fear. 50% would devastate our economy and cause mass starvation. Perhaps we could start with 10% and gradually increase. 50%, Kelvor interrupted. "You misunderstand your position, Ambassador. This is not a negotiation. This is an announcement of your future. The Dominion has ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. We have conquered 6,000 civilizations. Your weapons are primitive. Your ships are slow. You have 12 small colonies on nearby worlds. We control 47,000 planets. You cannot fight us. You cannot hide from us. You can only obey." Hana felt her hands trembling but kept her voice steady. "And if we refuse?" For the first time, Kelvor showed an expression. He smiled, and it was a terrible thing to see. "Then, we will demonstrate what happens to species who choose poorly. We are patient, Ambassador. We will wait your full 30 days. Use that time wisely." Back on Earth, Hana reported everything to the World Council. The council chamber was filled with representatives from every nation. The mood was grim. "We need more information about their military capabilities," said the Chinese premier. "We know nothing about their weaknesses." "Because they have no weaknesses," replied the American president. "We watched their ships hover over our most powerful cities for 3 days. Our best missiles couldn't reach them. Our fighter jets couldn't even get close before their engines failed. Dr. Yuna, the head of Earth's advanced weapons research, stood up. She was young for her position, only 35. But her intelligence was undeniable. I've been studying the scans we took of their ships. Their technology is centuries beyond ours, maybe more. But I think I've found something interesting. Their shields seem to have a biological component. There's an energy signature that matches living tissue. What does that mean? Asked Jiho, who attended the meeting as military advisor. It means their technology isn't purely mechanical. They've integrated biological systems into their ships. If we could develop a pathogen or biological weapon that targets those systems, we have 30 days, interrupted the Russian president. You're talking about research that would take years. The debates continued for 2 weeks. Meanwhile, Admiral Dae-hyun, who commanded Earth's colonial fleet, sent a secret message to Jiho. I've moved our ships away from the main colonies. If the Dominion attacks, at least some of our forces will survive. Jiho approved the decision but said nothing to the council. He was already thinking about what might come after. On day 28, the World Council took a vote. It was close, but the result was clear. Earth would refuse the ultimatum. They would offer a counter-proposal. Friendship and trade with the Dominion, but not submission. Jiho watched the vote with a heavy heart. He knew what would come next. He had seen the recordings of what happened to other species who refused. The Dominion didn't make empty threats. Ambassador Hana delivered Earth's response on day 30. Kelvor listened without emotion as she outlined humanity's counteroffer. When she finished, he stood up from his platform. Your answer is rejection, he said simply. Our answer is an alternative, Hana corrected. We can coexist as equals rather than as rulers and subjects. Kelvor walked toward her until he stood just inches away. There are no equals to the Dominion, only subjects and enemies. You have chosen to be enemies. Now, you will learn why that was a mistake. In 72 hours, we will provide a demonstration. All of humanity will watch. All of humanity will understand. Then, you will have one final chance to submit. He turned and walked away, leaving Hana standing alone in the cold shuttle. When Jiho heard the report, he immediately activated Emergency Protocol 7. It was a plan that existed only in classified files, a plan that no one believed would ever be needed. It called for the evacuation of essential personnel to underground facilities and the preparation of every military asset for a defensive war. But as he watched the Dominion ships begin to move toward their new positions, Jiho knew the truth. Humanity had no defense against what was coming. They could only endure it and hope that some survived to fight another day. The 72-hour countdown began. The Dominion ships moved into position over humanity's 12 colony worlds. The largest fleet gathered above Titan Colony, orbiting Saturn's moon. 10 billion people lived there, making it humanity's biggest settlement outside Earth. Titan had vast cities under protective domes, farms that fed 3 other colonies, and universities where the brightest minds studied. Governor Minji received the first warning from her orbital defense stations. 27 Dominion warships had surrounded Titan. She immediately ordered an evacuation, but she knew it was hopeless. The colony had only enough transport ships to move a few thousand people per day. Get the children out first, she ordered her staff. Focus all available ships on evacuation centers near schools and hospitals. Captain Taeyang commanded the defense platform that protected Titan's orbital space. He had 16 defensive satellites, 42 armed patrol ships, and a crew of 3,000. Looking at the Dominion fleet on his screens, he felt like a child with a toy gun facing a real army. All ships, battle stations, he ordered anyway. Charge all weapons. If they fire on the colony, we engage immediately. Down on Titan's surface, in the industrial district, a young engineer named Nari was working a late shift when the alarms began. She tried to call her family, but the communication network was overwhelmed with millions of people trying to reach loved ones. She ran outside and looked up through the transparent dome. Even in daylight, She could see the massive Dominion ships hanging in the sky like dark clouds. Fear grabbed her heart as she realized evacuation was impossible. There was nowhere to run. Then every screen in the colony changed. Every phone, every computer, every display in every home and building suddenly showed the same image. Ambassador Kelvor appeared, his black eyes staring out at humanity. "People of Earth and her colonies," he began. "You refused our generous offer. You chose defiance over wisdom. Now you will learn the price of that choice. What happens next will be broadcast to every human device in every human settlement." The view changed to show Titan colony from orbit. Minji, in the governor's office, felt her blood turn cold. They were going to broadcast the attack. They wanted all of humanity to watch. "Evacuate the command center," she told her staff. "Get to the emergency bunkers now." "Governor." "We should go too." "I'm staying," Minji said firmly. "Someone needs to coordinate rescue efforts for as long as possible. Now go." Captain Taeyang watched as the Dominion ships began to power up their weapons. The energy readings on his console climbed to levels that made no sense. "All ships, engage the enemy," he shouted. His patrol ships launched missiles and fired energy weapons at the nearest Dominion vessel. The weapons struck invisible shields and simply vanished. Absorbed like drops of water into an ocean, the Dominion ship didn't even seem to notice. Then the Dominion ships fired back. The first beam of energy was bright blue and struck Taeyang's defense platform directly. The shields held for exactly 2 seconds before collapsing. The platform, which had taken 10 years to build and was supposed to withstand anything, was cut in half. Taeyang died, along with his entire crew, in an instant. On Earth, in millions of homes, people watched in horror as the orbital defenses were destroyed in minutes. Every patrol ship that attacked was instantly vaporized. Every defensive satellite was reduced to debris. Then the bombardment of Titan colony itself began. The first strikes hit the dome generators. The massive energy beams punched through the transparent material like it was paper. Atmosphere began escaping into space. Alarms screamed throughout the colony as emergency bulkheads tried to seal the breaches, but there were too many holes. Nari ran with thousands of others toward the underground shelters. People were screaming, crying, pushing in panic. She saw parents carrying children, elderly people being helped by neighbors. Chaos everywhere. A section of dome above them collapsed. The rushing air dragged dozens of people out into the vacuum of space. Nari grabbed onto a railing and held on with all her strength as the wind tried to pull her away. The Dominion ships fired systematically, moving from sector to sector. They destroyed the power plants, cutting electricity to the entire colony. They destroyed the water treatment facilities, the hospitals, the transport hubs. They worked with terrible efficiency, making sure nothing was left functional. Governor Minji remained at her post, trying to coordinate rescue efforts, even as her building shook from nearby impacts. She broadcast messages of hope and instruction, telling people where to find shelter, which routes were still safe. "This is Governor Minji to all citizens. Section 7 has intact shelters. Medical teams are gathering at Junction 12. We will survive this. Stay strong. Help each other. We are humans. We do not break easily." A massive explosion destroyed the eastern half of the capital city. The shockwave shattered windows across the colony. Minji's building began to collapse around her. Her final transmission was simple. "Remember us. Make them pay." Then the building fell, and the transmission ended. Nari made it to an underground bunker with about 200 other people. The heavy doors sealed shut just as another section of dome failed above them. They sat in darkness, listening to the sounds of destruction above, feeling the ground shake with each impact. Someone found an emergency tablet that still had power. They accessed the broadcast that the Dominion was forcing everyone to watch. Nari looked at the screen and felt tears streaming down her face. From orbit, the bombardment continued. The beautiful domed cities of Titan were being systematically erased. Fires burned in the ruins. Bodies floated in the escaping atmosphere. 10 billion people were dying, and all of humanity was forced to watch it happen. On Earth, Commander Jiho stood in the operations room, his hands gripping the edge of a console so hard his knuckles turned white. Around him, officers were crying openly. Some were on their knees. Others stood frozen in shock. "Sir, we should send ships to help," someone pleaded. "No," Jiho said, his voice hard. "The Dominion fleet would destroy them before they reach Titan. All we can do is watch." The massacre took 6 hours. 6 hours of continuous bombardment. 6 hours of watching a civilization die. The Dominion ships were thorough, making sure every structure was destroyed, every defense eliminated, every hope extinguished. When it finally stopped, Titan colony was gone. Where there had been gleaming cities and green farmland under protective domes, there was now only twisted metal and shattered rock. The atmosphere had completely escaped. The bodies of billions floated in the ruins or lay buried under collapsed buildings. In the bunker deep below, Nari and the other survivors sat in silence. They had power for the life support systems, and the structure had held, but they were trapped under billions of tons of debris, with no way out and no one coming to save them. Nari found the emergency broadcast equipment. Her hands shaking, she recorded a message from the surface, showing the destruction around their bunker's external cameras. "This is Nari, civilian engineer. I'm one of maybe a few thousand survivors trapped underground. They killed everyone. 10 billion people. They didn't even send soldiers. They just shot us from orbit until nothing was left. Earth, if you're watching this, don't submit to them. Don't let our deaths be for nothing. Make them regret what they did here." She transmitted the message before she even knew if anyone could receive it. But on Earth, in the operations room, they received it. They received it and recorded it and played it at the emergency meeting of the World Council. Ambassador Kelvor appeared on screens across Earth one final time. "You have seen what happens to those who defy the Dominion. Titan colony is no more. 10 billion humans are dead. You have 48 hours to submit completely and unconditionally. If you refuse again, Earth will suffer the same fate. Choose wisely." The transmission ended, leaving humanity in shocked silence. But in that silence, something changed. The fear that had gripped Earth transformed into something else. Something harder. Something burning. People didn't cry anymore. They didn't panic. They got angry. In city squares around the world, crowds gathered spontaneously. They weren't protesting or rioting. They were simply standing together, united in grief and rage. Commander Jiho received thousands of messages from every branch of military service. Soldiers, pilots, engineers, scientists, all saying the same thing. They wanted to fight. They didn't care about the odds. They wanted revenge for Titan. Jiho walked to the secure conference room where the World Council was meeting. He carried a classified folder marked Emergency Protocol Retaliation. It was a plan that had been considered too dangerous, too desperate to ever actually use. He placed it on the table in front of the assembled leaders. "They want our submission," he said quietly. "I propose we give them something else. Something they won't expect. Something they'll regret." The President of Earth looked at the folder and then at Jiho. "What are you suggesting?" "War," Jiho replied simply. "Total war. They killed 10 billion of us to prove their strength. Let's show them ours." Deep beneath the mountains of the Korean peninsula, in a facility that didn't appear on any public maps, Commander Jiho gathered the best military minds humanity had left. The bunker had been built decades ago, during nuclear war scares. Now it would serve a different purpose. 46 hours remained until the Dominion's deadline. The conference room was crowded with officers, scientists, and strategists. Dr. Yuna sat at one end of the table, looking exhausted. She hadn't slept since Titan fell. None of them had. Admiral Daehyun appeared on the main screen via secure transmission from his hidden fleet position. His face was grim. My ships are scattered across asteroid fields in 4 different systems. The Dominion thinks we were destroyed with Titan's defense force. That gives us 1 advantage. Surprise. 1 advantage against an enemy with 1,000, muttered Colonel Hyun-woo, who commanded Earth's Special Operations Forces. He was younger than most in the room, but his reputation for unconventional thinking had earned him his position. Then we use that 1 advantage better than they use their 1,000, Jiho said firmly. He stood at the head of the table, the emergency protocol folder open before him. Dr. Yuna, tell them about Ghostfire. Yuna stood and activated a holographic display. It showed a sleek missile unlike anything in current military arsenals. Project Ghostfire. We've been developing it for 3 years in secret. It's a quantum torpedo that can phase through normal matter for brief moments. In theory, it could pass through the Dominion's shields. In theory? Asked Admiral Daehyun. We've only tested it twice, both times successfully, but on much smaller targets. A Dominion warship is massive. We'd need perfect placement and timing. Yuna paused. And we only have 7 functional prototypes. Building more takes 30 days minimum. The room fell silent. 7 missiles against a fleet of dozens of ships. What about the pathogen research? Jiho asked. You said their shields have biological components. Yuna nodded and changed the display to show cellular structures. This is from samples we collected during Ambassador Kelvor's visit. Their technology integrates living tissue. I've been working on a pathogen that targets these cells specifically. If we could introduce it into their ship's systems, it might degrade their shields and weapons. Dr. Salmon, the xenobiology expert who had been studying the Dominion samples non-stop, added, the pathogen works in lab conditions, but we'd need to get it inside their ships. That means infiltration. Colonel Hyun-woo leaned forward with sudden interest. The shuttle. The one they landed for negotiations. We still have it in quarantine. You want to use it to board their ships? Admiral Daehyun looked skeptical. They think we're beaten. They think we'll submit. They won't expect us to attack. Hyun-woo pulled up schematics of the captured shuttle. We studied this thing for weeks. I think we can fly it. And if we approach their command ship with proper identification codes, they might let us dock. Jiho could see the plan forming. It was desperate and likely suicidal, but it might work. Dr. Yuna, could your pathogen be deployed from inside a Dominion ship? If we can reach their environmental systems, yes. It would spread through the entire vessel within hours. And since their ships are networked, it might transfer to other nearby vessels through their biological communication links. Might, repeated Daehyun. This whole plan is built on might and maybe. All our plans are, Jiho said quietly. We're facing an empire that's conquered 6,000 worlds. We can't match their strength. We can only try to be smarter, faster, and more determined than they expect. He outlined the strategy as it formed. Phase 1. Infiltration teams would use the captured shuttle to board the Dominion flagship. Phase 2. They would deploy the pathogen into the ship's systems, weakening shields across the fleet. Phase 3. Admiral Daehyun's hidden forces would emerge and strike with the Ghostfire weapons at the vulnerable targets. Timing is everything, Yuna emphasized. The pathogen needs hours to spread and take full effect. If the fleet attacks too soon, the shields will still be functional. What about Earth's defense? Asked another officer. If this fails, we'll have no forces left to protect the planet. Jiho met his eyes steadily. If this fails, Earth is lost anyway. They'll bombard us like they did Titan. Our only chance is to hit them first, hit them hard, and hope we can hurt them enough that they reconsider their position, or make them angry enough to destroy us immediately, the officer countered. They've already decided to destroy us, Colonel Hyun-woo said sharply. We refused once. They slaughtered Titan. Even if we submit now, do you think they'll trust us? They'll occupy our planet, enslave our people, or kill us slowly over years. The debate continued for hours, refining details and identifying problems. The biggest issue was time. The Dominion demanded an answer in 46 hours. The pathogen needed at least 12 hours to weaken their shields. The infiltration team needed time to reach the flagship and deploy the weapon. Dr. Salmon suggested a solution. What if we publicly announce we're submitting? Buy time with a surrender ceremony. Make it elaborate. The Dominion seems to enjoy displays of submission. While they're watching Earth bow down, the real operation happens. It was deceitful and bitter to even suggest false surrender. But looking around the room, Jiho saw grim acceptance. Pride was a luxury they could no longer afford. We'll need volunteers for the infiltration team, he said. This is a one-way mission. The team might not make it back. I'll lead it, Hyunwoo said immediately. Colonel, my team specializes in impossible missions. This is exactly that. Hyunwoo's expression was hard. Besides, my sister lived on Titan. She taught music at a school there. If I'm going to die, I want it to be killing the things that murdered her. Jiho understood. Half the people in this room had lost someone on Titan. All right. Colonel Hyunwoo will lead the infiltration. Admiral Dae-hyun coordinates the fleet attack. Dr. Yuna prepares the Ghostfire weapons and pathogen deployment system. I'll handle the surrender ceremony and overall timing. They worked through the night, preparing equipment and drilling procedures. The infiltration team needed biosuits that could mimic Dominion physiology enough to fool their sensors. The pathogen had to be weaponized and loaded into portable deployment units. The Ghostfire torpedoes required careful calibration for the larger targets. Lieutenant Junho, an explosives expert, volunteered for the infiltration team. So did 8 others. They all knew the odds. They all went anyway. With 12 hours left before the deadline, Earth's government broadcast its official response. The president appeared on every channel, looking defeated and broken. After careful consideration, Earth has decided to accept the Dominion's terms. We will submit to imperial rule. We request that the formal surrender ceremony take place in Geneva, with full diplomatic protocols, so that this transition can be accomplished with dignity for both sides. It was a masterful performance. The president looked genuinely crushed, which wasn't hard given the circumstances. What the Dominion didn't know was that while he spoke, military transports were moving equipment into position, and infiltration teams were boarding the captured shuttle. Ambassador Kelvor accepted the surrender terms and agreed to the ceremony. It would take place in 30 hours, giving Earth time to prepare appropriate protocols. That gave the infiltration team their window. The shuttle launched quietly from a secret facility in the Pacific. Colonel Hyunwoo sat in the pilot's seat, wearing a biosuit that made him look like a Dominion soldier. Behind him, 9 other team members checked their weapons and equipment. Remember, Dr. Yuna's voice came through their communications. The pathogen is in sealed containers. Don't release it until you reach the environmental control hub. And be careful. If the Dominion detects what you're carrying before you deploy it, this whole plan fails. Understood, Hyunwoo replied. He looked back at his team. Young faces, scared but determined. Anyone want to back out? Last chance. No one moved. Good. Let's go kill some aliens. The shuttle accelerated toward the Dominion fleet. On Earth, preparations continued for the surrender ceremony. Admiral Dae-hyun positioned his ships at the edges of the solar system, waiting for the signal. Dr. Yuna made final adjustments to the 3 functional Ghostfire torpedoes they'd managed to complete, and Commander Jiho sat alone in his office, looking at pictures from Titan Colony before the attack. Happy people in beautiful cities, living their lives, completely unaware that everything they knew would end in fire and destruction. For Titan, he whispered to the empty room. For all of them. The countdown to humanity's desperate counterattack had begun. The captured Dominion shuttle approached the massive flagship Eternal Dominance, with its identification codes broadcasting on all frequencies. Inside, Colonel Hyunwoo's hands were sweating inside the biosuit gloves as he guided the small craft toward the docking bay. Unknown shuttle, identify your purpose, came a voice in the alien language. Hyun-woo's translator struggled with the words. Returning from planetary survey. Request immediate docking. Medical emergency aboard. It was the cover story they had prepared. The Dominion had sent several scout teams to Earth's surface during negotiations. This shuttle was claiming to be one of them returning. There was a long pause. Hyun-woo could feel his heart pounding. Behind him, Lieutenant Junho gripped his weapon tighter. Proceed to docking bay 7. Medical team will meet you. The bay doors opened like a massive mouth swallowing them. The shuttle settled onto the deck with a slight bump. Through the windows, Hyun-woo could see dozens of Dominion soldiers moving around the enormous hangar. Their ship alone could hold 100 human vessels. Stay calm, he whispered to his team. We're Dominion soldiers returning from a mission. Act like you belong here. They exited the shuttle wearing the biosuits that Dr. Salmon had designed. The suits mimicked Dominion biochemistry well enough to fool casual sensors. But a close inspection would reveal them as human. A Dominion officer approached. Report. What is the nature of the medical emergency? Ride. Hyun-woo pointed to one of his team members, who was pretending to be unconscious. Unknown pathogen. Contracted during surface exploration. We need immediate quarantine. It was a risk. But the Dominion's arrogance worked in humanity's favor. They believed humans were primitive and defeated. They didn't expect deception or attack. Follow me to the medical bay, the officer ordered. As they moved through the ship's corridors, Hyun-woo memorized the layout. The flagship was massive, almost like a small city. Thousands of crew members moved through halls that stretched in every direction. The walls were made of that strange shifting metal, and everything had a faint blue glow. In the bunker beneath Earth, Nari sat at a communications console. She had been rescued from Titan's ruins just 12 hours ago, pulled from the bunker by a desperate recovery team. Now, despite her exhaustion and trauma, she insisted on helping. I know Dominion systems, she had told Commander Jiho. I studied their technology for 3 months when they first landed. Let me help. Oh. Now she monitored the infiltration team's biosigns and tried to hack into the Dominion ship's external sensors. If she could create blind spots or false readings, it might help the team move undetected. Colonel, be advised, she transmitted quietly. You're approaching a security checkpoint ahead. 3 guards, heavily armed. In the flagship, Hyun-woo heard her warning through his concealed earpiece. He made a quick decision and gestured to Lieutenant Junho. As they reached the checkpoint, Junho suddenly collapsed. Convulsing as if having a seizure, the guards rushed forward to help. And in that moment of distraction, Hyun-woo's team moved past them. They weren't trying to escape notice entirely, just by precious seconds. The medical bay is the wrong direction, Hyun-woo muttered to his team. We need to reach environmental control. 2 levels down. Port section. They split from the Dominion officer who was leading them, claiming they needed to find quarantine facilities. The officer shouted after them, but they were already running. Alarms began to sound throughout the ship. So much for stealth, Junho said, pulling out his weapon. Time for Plan B. They fought through corridors as Dominion soldiers responded to the intruder alert. The human weapons were primitive compared to Dominion technology, but at close range, bullets still killed. 3 of Hyun-woo's team fell in the first firefight. 2 more died holding a choke point so the others could advance. Back on Earth, the surrender ceremony was beginning. Every news camera in the world focused on Geneva, where Earth's leaders gathered. The president stood at a podium, reading a prepared speech about humanity's decision to join the Galactic Dominion peacefully. Ambassador Kelvor attended via hologram, his expression satisfied. The ceremony would take hours, filled with speeches and symbolic gestures of submission. It was all theater, buying time for the real operation. Commander Jiho watched from the operations room, monitoring both the ceremony and the infiltration team's progress. How long until they reach environmental control? At current pace, 20 minutes, an officer reported. In the flagship, Hyunwoo and his remaining team members reached the environmental control hub. It was a vast chamber, filled with organic-looking systems that pulsed with light. This was the heart of the ship's biological technology. "Deploy the pathogen," Hyunwoo ordered. Junho opened the sealed containers. Inside was a black liquid that seemed to move of its own accord. They poured it into the environmental system's intake vents. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the liquid began to spread, flowing through tubes and channels faster than should be possible. The ship's systems started to react. Warning lights flashed across control panels. The pathogen was designed to attack the biological components that powered the Dominion's shields and weapons. "It's working," Junho shouted. "The infection is spreading through the network," but Dominion soldiers had found them. Energy weapons fired into the chamber. Junho was hit and fell. 2 others died, trying to hold the entrance. Hyunwoo grabbed the communications device and sent the signal. "Pathogen deployed." "Repeat, pathogen deployed." "Execute Phase 3. Then an energy blast caught him in the chest. The pain was immense. He collapsed next to the environmental controls, watching as the black liquid continued to spread through the ship's systems. With his last breath, he activated the detonator in his suit. The explosion destroyed the environmental control hub, ensuring the Dominion couldn't easily reverse the contamination. Across the solar system, Admiral Daehyun received the signal. "All ships, converge on Earth orbit. Attack pattern Alpha. Target the flagship first." His fleet emerged from hiding. 27 human warships against 40 Dominion vessels. It should have been a massacre. But the pathogen was working. The Dominion shields flickered and weakened as the biological systems failed. "Ghostfire torpedoes away," commanded the weapons officer on Daehyun's ship. The 3 quantum weapons phased through space and struck the Eternal Dominance. Without its full shields, the flagship's armor cracked. Secondary explosions rippled across its hull. Back on Earth, the surrender ceremony stopped abruptly as everyone realized what was happening. Kelvor's hologram flickered with rage. "You dare! You attack us during surrender talks. You will all..." "Weed," Commander Jiho stood and interrupted the transmission. "No. No more threats. No more ultimatums. You killed 10 billion of us to make a point. Here's our response." On every screen, the view changed to show the battle in orbit. Human ships were dying, but they weren't running. They rammed Dominion vessels. They set off nuclear weapons at point-blank range. They fought with a ferocity that stunned the Dominion forces. Dr. Yuna monitored the pathogen's spread. "It's transferring between ships through their biological communication network. Their whole fleet is being infected." Dominion weapons began malfunctioning. Shields collapsed entirely on some ships. The human fleet pressed their advantage, focusing fire on damaged vessels. The Eternal Dominance, with explosions still erupting across its surface, tried to retreat. But Daehyun's flagship, the Remember Titan, pursued relentlessly. He fired everything he had: missiles, energy weapons, even the ship's emergency thrusters, to gain ramming speed. "For my daughter," Daehyun screamed. She had been studying engineering on Titan. For all of them, the Remember Titan struck the Eternal Dominance at full speed. Both ships exploded in a blast of energy that lit up the solar system. Nari, watching from Earth, felt tears streaming down her face. They did it. They actually hurt them. The battle raged for 8 hours. By the end, 70% of the human fleet was destroyed. But half the Dominion forces were gone too, including their flagship and command structure. The surviving Dominion ships retreated, limping away from Earth with damaged systems and weakened shields. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Galactic Dominion had been forced to withdraw. In the operations room, exhausted officers were crying and cheering simultaneously. They had won, but the cost was terrible. Commander Jiho received a transmission on the emergency channel. It was heavily encrypted and came from deep space. This is Captain Hyemi of the Dominion ship Endless Victory. My crew has witnessed what happened here. The Empire's treatment of your species was unjust. There are those among the Dominion who do not agree with the Emperor's methods. We are transmitting to you complete fleet positions and communication protocols. Use this information wisely. The Empire will return with greater force. Be ready. The transmission ended. Jiho stared at the data, flooding his screens. Complete intelligence on Dominion military operations across dozens of sectors. Dr. Yuna looked at the information with growing excitement. This changes everything. We know where their ships are, where their supply lines run, where their colonies are vulnerable. They'll come back, Jiho said quietly. Probably with 10 times the force. Then we'll hit them first, replied Yuna. We'll take this fight to them. Jiho looked around the operations room at the exhausted but determined faces. They had lost so much. But they had also proven something important. Humanity could fight back. And they would never submit. 3 months after the Battle of Earth, the planet had transformed into something the Dominion would not recognize. Every factory worked around the clock. Every shipyard operated at maximum capacity. The scattered survivors from Titan had been recovered, including Nari and a few thousand others who had sheltered in deep bunkers. Earth had become a fortress. But more importantly, it had become a weapon. In the expanded underground facility that now served as military headquarters, Commander Jiho reviewed the latest production reports. His hair had gone completely gray in 3 months, and his face showed the weight of command. But his eyes burned with determination. Dr. Yuna, status report on the Ghostfire program. Yuna looked exhausted but satisfied. We've produced 147 functional torpedoes. Production rate is increasing as we refine the manufacturing process. We're also developing a smaller version that can be launched from fighter craft. The Dominion technology we captured? Jiho asked. Reverse engineered and improved. Our new ships use hybrid systems, combining their shield technology with our own innovations. We've also perfected what we're calling rift drives. Our vessels can now match Dominion FTL speeds and exceed their stealth capabilities. Jiho nodded and turned to the next officer. Fleet status? Admiral Hamey, the Dominion defector who now commanded a special unit, reported. The Vengeance fleet is ready. 52 warships, all equipped with the new technology. Not as many as we'd like, but each vessel is vastly superior to what we had 3 months ago. The biggest change was Nari. The young engineer who had survived Titan's destruction now held the rank of captain. She commanded a new type of ship called a Ghost Runner, designed for stealth attacks and rapid strikes. Her ship was named Titan's Revenge. Captain Nari, your strike group is ready? Jiho asked. Ready, sir. We've been practicing the attack patterns for weeks. My pilots know what to do. Jiho pulled up the strategic display. It showed Dominion space with all the information provided by defectors like Hyemi. There were 17 major Dominion worlds marked in red. The Dominion expects us to wait here, defending Earth until they return with their main armada. That's what any reasonable species would do. Jiho's expression hardened. We're not going to be reasonable. We're going to attack first, hitting them across multiple systems simultaneously. The room fell silent. It was a bold plan. Almost insane. Humanity would be taking the fight into Dominion territory. Dr. Salmon, who now headed the Xenobiology Warfare Division, added context. We've improved the pathogen. The new version spreads faster and targets multiple biological systems. We're also weaponizing it for atmospheric deployment on Dominion military bases. Won't that kill civilians? Someone asked. The pathogen only affects Dominion military biotechnology, Salmon explained. Their civilian infrastructure uses different systems. We're not targeting non-combatants. We're not like them. It was an important distinction. Humanity was fighting a war of survival, but they refused to become monsters in the process. The attack plan was intricate. simultaneous strikes on 17 worlds, targeting military installations while avoiding civilian casualties. The goal was to cripple the Dominion's ability to launch their planned massive assault on Earth. But there was a secondary purpose. The attacks would be broadcast across Dominion space, showing subjugated species that the Empire could be fought and beaten. "When do we launch?" asked Admiral Hiemi. 72 hours, Jiho replied. "The same amount of time they gave us before destroying Titan. I want them to understand this is justice, not random violence. Earth's governments had united completely now. There were no more separate nations, just humanity standing together." The broadcast went out to what remained of the colonies and to hidden outposts across human space. "This is Commander Jiho of the Terran Retaliation Force. 3 months ago, the Galactic Dominion massacred 10 billion of our people to demonstrate their power. They wanted to break us. They wanted us to submit in fear. Instead, they created something they should fear. Today, we take the fight to them. Today, we show the galaxy that humanity will never kneel. For Titan, for Earth, for freedom." The Vengeance fleet launched from Earth orbit. 52 ships, their new rift drives making them nearly invisible as they jumped to faster-than-light travel. They split into 17 strike groups, each heading to a different target. Captain Nari led her Ghost Runners toward a Dominion military shipyard orbiting a moon called Kelgash. Intelligence indicated this facility produced 40% of the Dominion's advanced warships. "Stay tight," she transmitted to her squadron. "Remember, we hit fast and disappear before they can respond effectively. The pathogen does most of the work. We just make sure they can't rebuild easily." Her ships dropped out of FTL right on top of the shipyard. The Dominion defenders barely had time to react before Ghostfire torpedoes tore through their shields and struck critical systems. Nari's weapons officer deployed atmospheric canisters filled with the improved pathogen. The black liquid spread through the facility's ventilation, infecting every biological system. Within minutes, the entire shipyard went dark as its systems failed. "All ships, target the construction platforms. Turn them into debris." They did exactly that. The massive platforms where Dominion warships were built exploded under concentrated fire. It would take the Dominion years to rebuild this facility, if they rebuilt it at all. Across 16 other systems, similar attacks unfolded. Military bases went offline. Supply depots were destroyed. Communication hubs were disabled. And every attack was broadcast across Dominion space by human infiltrators and rebel groups. The message was clear. Humanity was no longer prey. They were predators. But the most audacious strike was yet to come. While the 17 attacks drew Dominion forces away, a special team led by Commander Jiho himself approached the Dominion throne world. The planet Dominus had never been attacked in the Empire's 10,000-year history. It was considered untouchable, protected by orbital platforms and a massive defense fleet. But that fleet had been pulled away to respond to the attacks on the 17 worlds. The throne world was more vulnerable than it had been in centuries. "This is insane," muttered Lieutenant Minho, who piloted Jiho's stealth ship. "Yes," Jiho agreed calmly. "But that's why it might work." They approached the planet using captured Dominion identification codes. Captain Hyunwoo's brother, who had survived the infiltration of the flagship, led a team down to the surface. Their target was the Imperial Palace itself. The team wore perfect disguises and carried forged credentials, identifying them as security inspectors. They walked right past guards and into the palace complex. Once inside, they planted transmitters that would broadcast humanity's message throughout the entire palace. Then they fought their way out. It was brutal. Half the team died, but they achieved their objective. As the survivors escaped back to their ship, Commander Jiho activated the broadcast. Every screen in the Imperial Palace, including the throne room itself, showed the same image. "Emperor Vaklan of the Galactic Dominion," Jiho's voice echoed through the palace. 3 months ago, You ordered the death of 10 billion humans. You broadcasted across all our worlds to break our spirit. Today, we return the favor. We have struck 17 of your military installations. We have crippled your ability to project force. And now, we stand in your palace, proving that nowhere is safe from us. You wanted to teach us fear. You wanted us to submit. Instead, you have created an enemy that will never stop, never forgive, and never forget. We are humanity. We do not kneel. We do not surrender. And we do not lose. This is not about conquest. This is about justice. Withdraw from human space. Release the species you have subjugated. End your empire of oppression. Or we will end it for you. This is your only warning. The broadcast ended. Throughout Dominion space, on 1,000 worlds, subjugated species watched in amazement. Within days, 3 alien civilizations began open rebellions against Dominion rule. The Dominion's main armada did eventually reach Earth's solar system, 10,000 ships strong. But they arrived to find Earth evacuated. The entire population had been moved to hidden colonies and underground facilities. Instead of a planet to conquer, they found a trap. The entire solar system was one massive minefield. Millions of automated weapons platforms waited in ambush, and behind them lurked the Vengeance fleet with its improved weapons and technology. The Battle of Sol lasted 3 days. The Dominion lost 3,000 ships before they retreated. Humanity lost a quarter of its fleet, but the solar system remained free. The war that followed spread across the galaxy for months. More species rebelled. Dominion supply lines collapsed. Their empire, which had stood for 10 millennia, began to crumble. 6 months after the Titan massacre, Captain Nari led a fleet to the throne world of Dominus. The defenses were minimal, most forces having been pulled away to fight rebellions elsewhere. She transmitted a simple message: surrender now, or we bombardment this planet the way you bombarded Titan. You have 24 hours. Emperor Vaklon, facing revolution across his empire and a human fleet in orbit of his home world, chose to surrender. The broadcast of his submission was transmitted across the galaxy, just as he had broadcast Titan's destruction. But humanity did not destroy Dominus. They didn't massacre the population or enslave the survivors. Instead, they occupied the government centers, dismantled the military command structure, and freed the conquered species. We're not conquerors, Commander Jiho explained in a broadcast to both humans and the former Dominion species. We're liberators. Every species deserves freedom. Every civilization deserves the right to choose its own path. The Empire dies today, but the people of these worlds will build something better. Earth established the Free Worlds Coalition, an alliance of independent species dedicated to mutual defense and cooperation. The former Dominion worlds were given the choice to join or remain independent. Most chose to join. 1 year after the Titan massacre, a memorial was completed on the ruins of Titan Colony. It consisted of 10 billion individual lights, one for each person who died. The lights burned eternally, visible from space. Admiral Nari stood at the memorial with her family, who she had thought lost. They had survived in a deep bunker and been among the last rescued. She looked at the lights stretching to the horizon and thought about everything humanity had endured. "Tell me about the war, Mother," her young son asked. Nari knelt down to his level. "The war taught us something important. It taught us that strength isn't about how powerful you are. It's about refusing to give up, even when everything seems hopeless. The Dominion was stronger than us, but we won because we never stopped fighting for what was right. Will there be more wars? Maybe. The galaxy is a dangerous place. But now we have friends. We have allies. And everyone knows that humanity doesn't break easily." She stood and looked up at the stars, where human ships patrolled alongside vessels from a dozen other species. The Free Worlds Coalition was growing stronger every day. Somewhere in deep space, the remnants of the Dominion military were regrouping. Some predicted they would return eventually, seeking revenge. But humanity was ready. They would always be ready, because they had learned the most important lesson. When you knock humanity down, they don't stay down. They get back up, they adapt, and they become stronger than before. The Dominion had tried to teach humanity fear. Instead, they had taught humanity its own strength, and the galaxy would never forget what happened when someone tried to make humanity kneel. They would never forget the species that went from near extinction to liberators in less than a year. They would never forget the humans who refused to die. They would never forget Titan. And they would never forget humanity's response. Operation Alien Eradicate was complete. But humanity's story was just beginning.